Uomo umile forte nel suo amore, papà dai poveri di cuore buono. Siamo contenti, siamo gioiosi, grazie con tutto il cuore per te, oh papà. Salve, pace, amore per te, Francesco. Tu sei uomo di fede, di gran speranza. Unita fraternità è il tuo appello. Siamo contenti, siamo gioiosi, grazie con tutto il cuore per te, oh papà. Popolo del Kurdistan, golmo di gioia, ti dà il benvenuto, un gran saluto. Besser ciao Bacher Hati, con cuore grato. Siamo contenti, siamo gioiosi, grazie con tutto il cuore per te, oh papà. شينا ثلوخ وشلامة كل الأمر خلوخ عالموق قالي ولالي قسقو ثرفا بابا فرانسيس رعايات فقير وسنين
نعلي الصوت نعلي الصوت
سخلان وروزلان هي بيثك وغيبان هي شينا ثلوخ وشلامة يا بابا فرانسيس عزيز من بابا فرانسيس اي بياوي اشتي يعني كردستان برالا خوش وشادي
يلا صوت
بزرچاو باخر هاتي خوش ويستي اما خوش حالي زور سرفرازي دوا ودعاء زور مجنى بزرچاو هاتي
عالم بس صح ايوه بالسيارة بغداد
He spent time in Najaf in the south of Iraq, which is an important Shiite site, the third most important Shiite Muslim site after Mecca and Medina. And there he met with Grand Ayatollah al-Sistani, Ali al-Sistani, which was a landmark event. The Holy Father meeting one of the top representatives, the top representative in Iraq of Shiite Islam, in a private event, one of the most important elements of this visit. The Holy Father in Iraq had two major components to the visit, two major objectives: to build human fraternity, so meeting with leaders of other religions, and also to encourage the Catholic community. So that leads us to this third day, which is exactly that, a visit to the Christian populations of Iraqi Kurdistan in the north. These were populations tried by the ISIS aggression of just several years ago. They'll be going to cities of Erbil, which is the city that he's arrived in just now. He's about to get off the airplane. They'll be going to Mosul, which was taken by ISIS. For 3 years, there were no Catholic masses in the city of Mosul. They'll be going to Karakosh. There we see it. Karakosh being the largest Christian city on the plain of Nineveh. About 35,000 inhabitants, more than 90% are Christian. And it'll also be going to, again, to Erbil to celebrate a Mass in the stadium there, the François Stadium. The most important event we can say for Christians there, because there will be thousands of people there. It's a stadium that seats about 28,000 people. They're hoping for multiple thousands, up to 10,000 people at that Mass. Here the Pope greeting the local prelates, which include the head of the Syriac Catholic Church in the city, and also of the Chaldean Catholic Church. Here we see him greeting the Prime Minister and the President of Iraqi Kurdistan. Were set to meet the Holy Father there on the tarmac, and they will be having a private conversation in the airport terminal there before the Holy Father gets on his way to other places. This is part of the protocol of papal visits, always meeting with the state and church authorities, having private meetings often there in the airport in what they call the VIP room. We aren't privy to those conversations, but we always see the smiles on the faces of the people the Pope goes to visit, and that includes the heads of state, presidents, and also prime ministers. And as we often see, children coming up to greet the Holy Father, welcome him to this region with flowers. The Pope getting quite literally the red carpet treatment there in Iraq. These important moments follow just 2 days ago when the Holy Father arrived on the tarmac in Baghdad's international airport, where he was greeted by the Prime Minister of Iraq. He had a private meeting with him there at the airport before going to the the presidential palace. We met with the president privately as well, and then also publicly, where he gave his first address to the diplomatic corps, to state authorities, entrepreneurs, members of civil society. From there, he went on to meet with bishops, priests, religious, consecrated persons, seminarians, and catechists at the Syro-Catholic Cathedral of Our Lady of Salvation in Baghdad. It was a church that was hit by a terrorist attack where 48 people were killed just a few short years ago. To see that church up again obviously rebuilt after that massacre, to see the community there, for the Pope to visit them, and see how much it meant to all of them to have the Pope in their midst. The first ever Pope to visit Iraq. And many of them were saying, we're telling our correspondents, it's beautiful to be that generation that the Holy Father has come to visit. And that wrapped up the first day, Friday, and then on Saturday, March the 6th, yesterday, the Holy Father left for Najaf in the morning in the south and paid a visit to the Grand Ayatollah, Sayyid Ali al-Husseini al-Sistani, just in his private apartment. He's got a small, simple, rented apartment. The Holy Father sitting there next in this, what will become an iconic photo, sitting next to al-Sistani, just on his couch. And there they had a conversation that lasted much longer than anyone expected, about 45 minutes. And where al-Sistani voiced support for the small Christian population of Iraq, where the Holy Father thanked him for speaking up on behalf of the persecuted. And from there was another major meeting, which was much more public, where the Pope also gave an address at a place called Ur, which is the birthplace of Abraham, and also, in a sense, the birthplace of the three major monotheistic religions. It's Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Being that Abraham is considered the father of believers of all three of these religions. There were also Zoroastrians and other small religious communities that are from this region of Mesopotamia, an ancient region, the cradle of civilization. And just bringing, often the Pope will speak about how the meeting is the message. And that really seemed to be the case yesterday, just meeting in peace there at the site of Abraham's birth. The meeting was very much the message. That all of these religions and all of these peoples can live in peace. See the Holy Father continuing to greet delegations there at the airport of Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan in the north, where he's embarking on this third day of this landmark visit to Iraq. We'll be meeting particularly with the Christian community there. When he's got three speeches that he'll be giving today publicly. After this official welcome there at the airport, where he'll have a private conversation with the President and the Prime Minister of the autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan. From there, he'll be going to Mosul by helicopter, a city that was taken by ISIS. He'll be praying in the central square, the church square of Mosul, where previous to ISIS, there were 4 major churches there. There were the Syriac Catholics, the Chaldeans, the Syriac Orthodox, and the Armenian Orthodox, all on one square. We've gone through the process of rebuilding and bringing people back to Mosul after so many had fled. So the Holy Father will lead a prayer for the victims of war there. And then he'll go by helicopter again to Karakosh, which is a city of about 35,000 people, where there's the Church of the Immaculate Conception, which was the largest church in all of Iraq. Was destroyed, taken by ISIS and destroyed, has been rebuilt. The Holy Father will be visiting the Catholic community there and praying the Angelus with them, the noonday Marian prayer, before going on to Erbil again, this time by car, where he'll see much of the countryside of the Iraqi Kurdish region, and then he'll be celebrating Mass in a stadium in Erbil, with thousands of Catholics there, and not only Catholics, we've heard of others, even Muslims, signing up to be a part of this Mass. It's by reservation only. Have to make sure that they keep control of the security situation, but also limit the possibility of spreading COVID. A very tricky visit for the Pope, having to balance those things. Traveling in the middle of a pandemic, but we can see how much it really means to the people of Iraq to have him in their midst. The song that they're singing it in what sounds like Arabic at this point, but they were singing the same song in Italian earlier, speaking about how great it is to have Pope Francis in their midst. Holy Father being greeted there in the airport, again by children, dressed in traditional costume. You see different prelates walking across the camera there. He's traveling with 4 cardinals, the Pope is. There's Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Secretary of State. There's also Cardinal Filoni, Fernando Filoni, who's the Grand Master of the Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, based in Rome, but he is the former Apostolic Nuncio, the top papal diplomat to Iraq. He was there with the U.S. invasion in 2003. We're also traveling with Cardinal Leonardo Sandri, who's his point man, the head of the Congregation for Eastern Churches, point man for relations and with the Chaldean Catholic Church and also the Syro-Catholic Church, which are very important rites. They're local to Iraq, in addition to the Latin Rite Catholics. There's also Cardinal Miguel Ángel Ayuso Guichot, who is the head of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. Important element to this trip, and to Pope Francis' pontificate, encouraging what he calls human fraternity, which is an objective also of this visit. He said he was going to Iraq as a pilgrim of hope, seeking fraternity. One person that we've seen regularly across this trip as well, who was there at the airport in Baghdad to greet the Holy Father when he arrived 2 days ago, is Cardinal Luis Rafael Sacco, who is the head of the Chaldean Catholics, the patriarch of that church. The Holy Father stepping into a private room here to speak with the Prime Minister and the President, with the ubiquitous interpreters, helping him to communicate well with everyone he sees. Always very cordial visits. You see the Pope very relaxed there. A little bit of a limp. He arrived with that limp. He's got sciatica that afflicts him, and he's got to battle through that. He's 84 years old, and he doesn't let that stop him traveling. The Holy Father really a great inspiration in that sense, an amazing thing. A lot of grace there with the Holy Father traveling on an international trip, his first in more than 13 months, what with the COVID pandemic. I always see him sitting down to a private conversation with also representatives of the local Catholic churches. There's the Archbishop, Chaldean Archbishop of Erbil, which is Bashar Warda. And next to him there is the Syro-Catholic Archbishop Nizar Seman. President and Prime Minister of the autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan, this northern region of Iraq. It's about 330 kilometers, about an hour's flight away from Baghdad. So the heads of the Iraqi Kurdistan there saying that it's our great pride and the pride of all of our people to have you here in our midst. Our cameras being ushered out of the room there. We leave the Holy Father to his private courtesy visit with the Prime Minister and the President of the northern Iraqi region of Iraqi Kurdistan. We invite you to stay with us for further coverage of the day, this third day of an important visit of the Pope, the first ever of any Pope to Iraq. Thank you for being with us. I'm Alan Holdren, UWTN's Vatican Bureau Chief. Thanks to all of our technicians who brought us these images from Iraqi Kurdistan and continue to bring this historic apostolic voyage to Iraq, to all of the world. We have correspondents there traveling with the Pope as well. Colin Flynn, who reports for EWTN News Nightly, EWTN News in Depth. And you can follow all of his activities by way of his social media and also that of EWTN Vatican. And follow all of our coverage on CatholicNewsAgency.com and National Catholic Register coverage as well at ncregister.com. We have Alejandro Bermudez, the Executive Director of the ASI Group, which includes Catholic News Agency and its other 5 now sister agencies in other languages and regions. And he is there in Erbil visiting also with the Catholic community and preparing the way for this papal visit. Ongoing coverage which you can follow there at CatholicNewsAgency.com and also on his social media, Alejandro Bermudez. And we have Alexei Gotowski, who is working with Colin Flynn on bringing back images, beautiful video images of everything that's going on, which you'll be able to catch on our weekly Vaticano program. I have a special episode dedicated to this papal visit, a little look behind the scenes, interviews with those involved. It's exciting to see everything that's coming from this trip. Look at all the children there waiting for the Holy Father to come back out again so they have a chance to greet him a second time after he walked in just moments ago on that red carpet. You see the helicopter the Holy Father will be taking to Mosul after this visit with the President and Prime Minister of Iraqi Kurdistan. In Mosul, a city that was taken by ISIS and then in 2017 was retaken and liberated so that the Catholics and Christians could begin returning. It's been a difficult process of rebuilding and repopulating, in a sense, the Christian presence there on the plain of Nineveh. A lot of issues, not only the loss of homes or the destruction of homes, but also the destruction of trust, which has been a very difficult thing, as anyone can imagine, where going back home you don't know who to trust. You don't know possibly your own neighbors had turned against you. And there are stories, many stories of neighbors helping to rebuild the Christian presence there as well. It's going to be a process of decades to reestablish the Christian presence there, which isn't a given. In an interview that Archbishop Bashar Warda, who's sitting in the lounge there with the Holy Father, meeting with the Prime Minister and President, the Chaldean Catholic head of the Archdiocese of Erbil there, said that it's not an absolute given that the Christians will survive all of this. We're talking about a population that was more than 1.5 million individuals just over 10 years ago. And at this point, in all of Iraq, we're looking at about 500,000 according to the most optimistic estimates. There's been a huge outflux of Christians to other parts of the world, anywhere where they could find a safe home. So in the diaspora, this presence of these Christian communities out in the rest of the world, there are many who will not return, even if the security situation, the safety improves greatly. They will not return to Iraq because they've established themselves elsewhere. Others who would love to return home when the security can be guaranteed, and others who never left Iraq or who have left Iraq and have ventured to return, and they've taken a chance. And responding to a question from our correspondent Colin Flynn about whether or not there's that risk of complete elimination of the Catholic presence, Christian presence in Iraq, he says that is a risk. That is a risk, and it's something that we need the world's help to address. Is that It's a political situation, it's an economic situation, and many of those things can be addressed with international legislators by all people, just addressing their local legislators and asking them to advocate on behalf of Iraq's population, advocating for peace, advocating for policies, international policies that would allow for the reconstruction in harmony with others. And it's a long-term process, and it's not a given. So here's hoping that this papal visit will draw attention to all of these topics and themes that are of utmost importance to the people that we're seeing on screen here. People that have chosen to continue or are forced to continue to live there in Iraq and are making the most of a very difficult situation. There's stories of people fleeing from Mosul and Karakosh, these cities that Pope Francis will be visiting today, and coming to Erbil, which has been really the fortress of Christianity there in Iraq. And they weren't easy situations. They were forced to leave overnight, basically. And those who were held up at checkpoints by the terrorists, these Islamists, were given options. They were given the option either to convert to Islam, to pay a tax, to remain, or in difficult, with severe limitations, or to flee. Many of them, all of them, chose to flee, keeping their faith intact, but also putting themselves in difficulty as refugees. A huge refugee camp still in this northern region of Iraq. People hoping to be able to move back to their homes that were destroyed when ISIS took much of the Nineveh plain. There you see the flags on the front of the terminal there. That's the Vatican flag on the left there, the yellow and white. And then on the right, we see that of Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan, which is an autonomous region which was established just in 2005. After the American invasion of Iraq in 2003, it was a way to bring greater peace to the region, and you see that there's a real pride in that being the identity, a part of the identity of the Iraqi Kurds. Inside in the lounge where the Pope is meeting with the Prime Minister and President, there is again those two flags in addition to the Iraqi flag, the national flag. Keep going back to that helicopter. That's the helicopter that will be taking the Pope to Mosul in just a few minutes, where he'll be praying in the church square in the center of the city for all victims of war. And then we'll take him to the community of Karakosh, where he'll be praying the Angelus prayer at noontime with faithful at the Immaculate Conception Cathedral. The church, excuse me. The Holy Father again greeting parts of the state delegation, authorities from the autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan. On his way back out to the tarmac, we'll be taking that helicopter in just a matter of minutes. See the ever-present interpreter there. Holy Father again sitting down to a second conversation here. Pope always seems tireless in these apostolic voyages. This one being 4 days. He's taken longer voyages through the years, up to even 10 days. But this is his first apostolic voyage since the pandemic began. He was vaccinated in the lead up to the trip, as were all of the delegation that is accompanying him, including the journalists who were traveling with the Pope. You see he's without a mask there. It's been customary throughout this trip for the major events, and when they aren't able to keep distances, the Pope has also worn a mask, as was done on the papal flight. Trying to limit the possibilities for contagion to those who haven't got the vaccination. That was a point of concern also for the major events, in particular today's Mass this evening. There will be Mass at the Franco Hariri Stadium in Erbil, which seats 28,000, but there will be up to 10,000 people present, trying to keep those distances, but also trying to allow for as many people as possible to be with the Pope and celebrate Mass with the Pope. You could say this is the culmination of the trip for the Catholic community there. It's hard to hear what the Pope is saying here. This is meant to be a private courtesy visit. And again, our cameraman being ushered out of the room there to leave this as a private conversation. And security has been a major concern for this apostolic voyage for the Pope. There, military soldiers omnipresent on the streets, leading from one event to another, but also surrounding the locations where the delegations are staying. We've had reports from our correspondent there on the ground that they've been accompanied every step of the way by soldiers with automatic weapons, and that they've been largely limited in their movements to the hotel that they're staying and just to the major events, which is just to ensure their safety and security. There were reports just this morning there in Baghdad of a bombing in a district just 3.5 miles away from the hotel where the journalists are staying. Just a reminder that it is a conflict zone. It is a site of difficulties. There, of course, are there's the green zone there in Baghdad that has been a protected space for years now, since the US-led invasion in 2003. And just days ago, just days before, excuse me, the Pope departed, there were rocket attacks. This is an ongoing reality for all people in Iraq. Something that the Pope has been speaking to as well, is inviting the other religions there, inviting all people to be messengers of peace, to be peacemakers. Something that he called himself in the lead up to this trip in a video message to Iraqis was a pilgrim of hope. Someone who was coming to the country to be also someone advocating for fraternity. This has been an ongoing topic, a theme of his pontificate, something that he feels so strongly about that he wrote an encyclical letter just 1.5 years ago that he has been giving to all visiting heads of state. It's called Fratelli Tutti, all brothers, or brothers all, seeking to build on this sense of human dignity that whatever religion we come from, we all have dignity as human beings given to us by God. So really building on that, trying to establish peace in areas of conflict, coming to a place like Iraq, all the difficulties that it could bring, and the risk that it is. Holy Father said that he couldn't not come. It was something that he had set out to do. His general audience on Wednesday of last week, he said it was something that he wanted to follow through with. The people of Iraq were hopeful for a visit from John Paul II for the Jubilee in the year 2000, something that John Paul II really wanted to do, to go to the birthplace of Abraham, which is something that Pope Francis was able to do yesterday. The Holy Father saying that he didn't want the people of Iraq to be disappointed again. So he was going to follow through with this trip, as he has done. He hasn't shown any signs of anxiety. He's well taken care of. He's well protected. And we hope that that continues. We pray that that continues throughout this trip, which will end tomorrow. He'll be flying back to Rome in the morning after this last full day of events today in Iraqi Kurdistan, in the north of the country, where the main city is Erbil, which is where he is right now. It's a population of 1.7 million, coming from the population of about 7 million of Baghdad. So these are two large cities within Iraq. This Erbil is one of the most ancient cities on earth. It's been inhabited since at least at least 2,000 years before Christ. Well, I'm just going to address some questions that have come in by way of social media. We got a question from Johnny in the Philippines. Is Pope Francis the first pope to go to Iraq? Thought JP2 wanted to go or tried to go. That's right, Johnny. So he is the first pope to ever travel to Iraq, and it's the historic nature of this trip is that when he touched down, those were the first steps that any successor of Peter had ever taken in Iraq. Although the faith dates back to the first centuries after Christ. We're talking about Christian communities that predate even Islam itself. We often think that Iraq, it is a majority Muslim nation, but the Christian presence dates back to the very origins of Christianity. And today, the majority of the Catholics there are Latin Rite, but there are also the Chaldean Catholic Rite and the Syro-Catholic Rite that are well represented. So that's there's always a first or a series of firsts for a papal trip. Like the first time yesterday that the Pope had met with the Shiite Islam leader there of Iraq was the Grand Ayatollah al-Sistani. Also the first time the Pope had ever celebrated a Mass in the Chaldean Catholic Rite took place yesterday evening. But the very trip itself is the first ever time a successor of Peter has been to Iraq, Pope Francis being the first. I have a question also from Louise from Indonesia. What's the significance of the Pope going to Kurdistan? Why is it so important for him to go? That's a great question, Louise, and it's because of the Christian and Catholic presence there. These are, when you speak to a Christian from Iraqi Kurdistan, from this northern region, they'll tell you about the plain of Nineveh. And this is the same plain of Nineveh that's referred to in the Bible, the place where Jonah goes, where his tomb was actually located, which was also attacked by ISIS. But the cities are described as the Christian cities and villages of the plain of Nineveh. So you have cities like Karakosh that the Pope will be visiting this afternoon, which is known as a Christian city, the largest Christian city of the plain of Nineveh, where more than 90% of the population is Christian, many of those being Catholics. So you have four main Christian realities. You have the Syro-Catholics, you have the Chaldean Catholics, and then you have the Syriac Orthodox, and the Armenian Orthodox. It was a very established, millenary Christian community that's there in Kurdistan on the plain of Nineveh. And it really has an amazing history. They're set within the reality of Iraq itself, which has a millenary history of civilization. And they call it Mesopotamia. You see signs welcoming Pope Francis to Mesopotamia on the streets of Iraq. It's really a testament. I mean, you think of what you hear of these regions from the rest of the world growing up, and it really is the cradle of civilization. We have another question from Irma in the Philippines. Is Pope Francis having regular COVID tests, worried about people not wearing masks? The Pope and other people who were traveling with him, they all were vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine before they came to Iraq. So they're fairly well covered if that all holds. But also they are required to wear masks just as anyone else. And so we'll see that throughout the trip. Those were the major concerns of this visit. Security, but then also trying to limit the spread of the virus in a place like Iraq, where there has been a boom in the number of new cases over the course of the last month. So we're going to close up this live broadcast. Thanks for those questions. Thanks for all of you who are watching. Please stay tuned for more events throughout the day following Pope Francis on this historic first ever visit of a Pope to Iraq. I'm Alan Holdren. Thank you so much for being with us.